No government ever voluntarily reduces itself in size. So government programs once launched never disappear. Proliferating bureaus with their thousands of regulations have cost us many of our constitutional safeguards.
Welcome back. Best show in Atlanta, right here, Uptown and Buckhead. Butler on Business, live with the GOP's own Chris Marola. Red Momentum.
Chris, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing well. And yourself?
We're doing well. Hey, before we get started, a cousin of mine, one that lives in Tennessee, my parents listen. They'll want to know which one. Cousin Brad, for my family members listening.
Okay.
Sent me an email I think is worth pointing out real quick. The General Vo Nguyen Giap, and all apologies to Vietnamese people if I mispronounce that. No, well, it's G-I-A-P. I do know, like, N-G-U-Y-E-N is Nguyen.
Yeah.
I had a bunch of Vietnamese that worked for me, and we always speculated, whoever in the world anglicized their names didn't know the English language, but I used to pronounce Nguyen Nguyen for the longest time until I got corrected. So maybe this guy's name is Giap, but he was a brilliant, highly respected leader of the North Vietnamese military. I mean, he was their guy. And he just published his memoirs, and in it, here's a quote. Quote, what we still don't understand is why you Americans stopped the bombing of Hanoi. You had us on the ropes. If you had pressed us a little harder, just for another day or two, we were ready to surrender. It was the same at the Battle of Tet. You defeated us. We knew it and thought you knew it too. But we were elated to notice your media was helping us. They were causing more disruption in America than we could in the battlefields. We were ready to surrender. You had won.
Wow.
That's all true. Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's a quote, do not fear the enemy, for they can only take your life. Fear the media, for they will distort your grasp of reality.
Very, very much true. And that's Walter Cronkite went live on national television and said that the United States had lost the Tet Offensive and just grossly distort and basically lie. And that's what helped turn the tide of, opposition to the war in a bigger, favor towards that opposition. In other words, his lies, Walter Cronkite's lies, it really got everybody angry. When they saw the numbers, the raw data, and saw how many people died, how many Americans died at the Tet Offensive, they thought, this thing isn't winnable. Yeah, sure, a lot of Americans died, but we won the battle. In fact, I think there were 4 to 5 times as many Vietnamese that died at the Tet Offensive, and that, of course, was not emphasized. So, yeah, this whole distortion, this whole hate America crowd, it runs pretty deep and pretty long for many decades. In our history, the media has been pushing the envelope, and they've been behind a lot of this.
Well, and I argue that they're doing it right now with regard to the economy and the broader issues that we face as a nation. I mean, clearly the bulk of them love President Obama.
Right.
And I'm happy for them that they do, but as a result, kind of like that Benghazi thing where they just kept that quiet really until after the election, and just a number of things. But I would have to say, in all fairness, Fox is doing the same thing for the GOP.
Not to the same degree, but I think it does happen. What I found out through my research was that, and you've heard me mention this before, the Brookings Institute has a number of people in the media that are associated with their organization. So you have these think tanks, these left-wing think tanks like the CFR, like the Brookings Institute, basically pushing the envelope, and the Democrat Party takes the marching orders from these think tanks. And so this is why the media and the people who are in Congress and the Democrat Party as a whole simply follows the same set of talking points, because they get them from the same two think tanks. It's really crazy. In fact, here's Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi recently said that many Republicans don't believe in government. Now, how do you interpret that when she says many Republicans don't believe in government?
Well, I mean, she is a big government person. The irony of Miss Pelosi, in which I think or hypocrisy, is a lot of the stuff she rails against the GOP, she does herself.
Oh, yeah, that's true. She does do that. She does, act as an attack dog. But what does it mean when she says Republicans don't believe in government? In other words, she's saying Republicans don't believe in big government or socialist statist-type government. She goes on to say in her interview, this happened recently on an NPR radio interview, she said they, meaning the Republicans, are anti-government ideologues, and that's what the speaker has to deal with. Well, guess what? When government is as big as it is, it's easy for people to be outraged. Let's take, for example, the comparison between the Bush administration and this current Obama administration. Under George W. Bush, 17% of our economy was under control of the government. Not a nice number, 17%, but nowhere near as large as now. Under Obama, 40% of our economy is under control of the federal government. So you can see how government is taking a larger role in our lives, and we're not getting anything better out of it. We're not getting a better performance. I mean, healthcare costs are going up, not down, because of Obamacare. The deficit and the debt are rising, and so, when she says we don't believe in government, I think it's better for us to say we don't believe in that kind of government.
I would agree with that. I mean, she's a big government person as long as she's in charge.
Right. Isn't that ironic? Sure. As long as she's on top of that pyramid. Well, as she's saying this, as Pelosi's making this statement on NPR, that many Republicans don't believe in the government, and that the Republicans, they're the obstructionists, and we need big government. At the same time, Gallup has taken a poll that says 50% of Americans believe this nation's best years are behind us. Now, do you see a correlation? Government gets bigger, has as much as 40% of the economy under its control, and more Americans today believe our nation's best years are behind us. I think there's a strong correlation between big government and the fact that we believe our best years are behind us.
Well, Chris, did you listen to his inaugural address?
Yeah, as much as I possibly could, to grin and bear it, yes.
It was a more flowery version of "You did not build this," and correct me if you disagree with my summary. It was a more, the language was a little more flowery, but it was still the "you did not build this" theme, and then we don't need to be cutting spending.
Yeah, well, that's just it, because supposedly the sky is falling, Chicken Little. We need to fight climate change, right? So, I mean, that we need to spend all this money on climate change, according to him, as he stands there in the freezing cold. So I just see some irony there.
No doubt.
Yeah, it's pretty funny stuff. But think about it. I mean, Americans are saying that 50%, half of the people polled, are saying our best days are behind us. So every time government gets a greater role, or takes a greater role in our lives, we don't get better government, and we don't get a better lifestyle, and we don't get a better situation for everyone, even though that's what's been promised. I mean, I think it's time we start calling these people out and saying, hey, you promised that if you took over this portion of our economy and this portion of our lives, things would be better. Well, things aren't better.
Well,
you know?
yeah.
I think that's what shows like this do. They hold people's feet to the fire and get people to start thinking about things outside the box. And
Right.
guests like you help feed that.
Well, the funny thing is every time you do that, the Democrats then shift gears and they say, oh, well, we need to spend more money on a new problem.
Yeah.
Climate change. And so it's like they just got a long laundry list of fictitious problems that they just keep throwing out there so that they can justify the expense. Remember, I'm sorry?
Oh, I was just going to say, or when they're on their way to their global warming rallies and their SUVs that get, 5 gallons to the mile, and I meant to say it that way. It's
Right.
just completely hypocritical.
Yeah, or flying in their Lear jets,
Yeah.
right, to the global warming rallies. Well, how about this? This is pretty interesting. Vladimir Lenin, the man who led the Bolshevik Revolution in the Soviet Union, said this is how you advance socialism. He said, first create a problem, then offer the solution.
Oh, they're so good at that, too.
Oh, yes, absolutely so. In as much as there is a lot of things to criticize among, Republicans and about the Republican Party, I still balk at the idea that there's no difference between Democrats and Republicans. I think you're going to find the overwhelming majority of Republicans are going to oppose any kind of gun control, where the overwhelming majority of Democrats will be in favor of it. I think you will see how the overwhelming majority of Republicans still believe in some idea of the Constitution, where the overwhelming majority of the Democrats, and I'm speaking of legislators, not those who are registered voters, but I'm speaking of the legislators, the overwhelming majority of the Democrats don't think much or anything of what the Constitution is supposed to mean.
Well, you're so right about that, Chris. Truth has become subjective, and that's it. When you don't believe in absolute truth, like you've mentioned before in previous segments, everything is up for sale, and it goes to the highest bidder. I was watching this movie called The Campaign last night. I mean, it was definitely a humorous twist on the reality and sheer harshness and ugliness of politics, but there was a lot of truth in it. A lot of vote buying, a lot of self-serving interests, and I think our politicians are no exception to that.
It's true. And once you allow moral and cultural relativism to take hold, and it has for decades now, it goes back to the 1920s. John Dewey was a strong proponent of that being taught in schools, and now we see what the result has been. If you don't believe there's an absolute standard of right and wrong, there isn't a belief that everything has a purpose, an absolute beginning and end. If everything is just how you want it to be, and everyone does what is right in their own eyes, well, what's the Constitution? Why does it matter?
And there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, Chris Marola, Red Momentum Strategies. Chris, as always, man, we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
All right, buddy. Thank you.
Right on. You're welcome. When we come back, we'll have a little bit of history, and I don't know. Let's leave the rest up to fate. What do you think, Alan?
Yeah, a little bit of history and a little bit of we'll see you tomorrow. But we've got one more segment to go.